Navan Fort is located just south of Armagh. Its potential as a tourist attraction has long been recognised, but plans only started to take shape 5 years ago. Heritage is now seen as a major earner, a tourist feature that sits perfectly with the needs of areas of high unemployment where new jobs can be created to cater for a culture-hungry public from home and abroad. But this kind of development occasionally brings into conflict deeply held beliefs. Navan is a classic dispute of its kind. Two sides, each with impeccable credentials. Both agree on conservation. They disagree on how to go about it. This is what's at stake.
We're looking at half a square mile of ritual sites dating well over 1,000 years in almost continuous use and very intensive use. We know that this half square mile has produced an enormous amount of archaeology, both accidentally and to people searching properly for it. And yet we have simply pricked the surface. The amount of archaeology here is just absolutely immense.
The archaeological facts give rise to other, perhaps more colourful values. The legends of ancient Ulster. Historian Ian Adamson brings these to life.
The main character were the Red Branch Knights and Cuchulainn, who was the champion of Ulster. The Red Branch Knights were mainly of the old tribe of the Uli, who were the dominant people of the north of Ireland. These are the stories of the wars of Ulster, or the Uli, against the men of Ireland, that is, the men of the rest of Ireland. And the recurring themes are of love and war and romance.
Now, is there any way you would identify the warriors of the Red Branch with one or other of our traditions, or do they embrace all?
No, these stories are before orange and green, and in a way they're beyond spiritually, beyond orange and green, because they belong to the two main traditions here.
Non-denominational, legends, a sense of mystery, the past, all classic ingredients to make Navan a perfect tourist attraction.
The Navan Fort project will bring to the island of Ireland a major international tourist attraction based on the main selling point of Ireland as a holiday destination. The myths, the legends, the history, all of that. It will bring some 150,000 plus visitors to the Armagh area, many of them out-of-state visitors who will bring major economic benefit with them.
Now, distilling the whole thing down to the core of the controversy, which essentially is archaeological loss as opposed to commercial development, does this concern you?
It concerns us that there will always be some form of opposition to a project that is going to have some sort of impact on an historic or archaeologically sensitive area. I'm afraid there always will be that. We are trying to balance, along with, of course, the developers of the project, a sensitively designed major tourist attraction. The balance of right and wrong, we believe, falls on the side of doing the development and gaining the economic benefit to the Armagh area in terms of employment, in terms of economic well-being.
All the key elements are there to make Navan the ideal amenity. So what is it that has Richard Warner and his colleagues so concerned about the proposed development?
I'm all for developing the heritage in such a way that there is that the best educational value can be brought out of the heritage. That's what the heritage is for. What I'm against is using the heritage as a way of simply getting money, getting profit. In other words, the heritage is worth preserving because it's worth preserving, not because it's worth money. We see the need for an interpretation centre for Navan. There's no doubt about that. What we don't see the need for is the sort of grossly overinflated cultural does-everything type centre which is being proposed here, where they're talking about sports arenas and hotels and the rest of it as coming as part of the package in years to come.
It's the interpretive centre and what it might do to the surrounding area of unexplored land, potentially valuable in archaeological terms, that's the kernel of this dispute. So what in fact is planned?
Well, Brian Musgrave, you're the project director with Navan at Armagh. This is an artist's impression looking out from the site. Talk us through what you have in mind by way of the interpretive centre.
Well, initially the centre was intended to be placed just here. This, in fact, is Navan Fort, and we're now looking southwest from the fort. The intention would have been to merge the centre into the landscape considerably by settling it into the side of the hill.
You mean you would have disguised it?
Well, yes, that we would have undertaken considerable landscaping to ensure that it was visually acceptable. The initial application, though, which was made in October last year, was for the centre to be placed here, just here, and following extensive consultations with the Department of the Environment, the Planning Service, with archaeologists, with the Historic Monuments Council, we decided that we should in fact push the centre a little further away, down to this location.
So that means you're moving from here to down there.
That's right.
That's about 3 fields away.
It is. It's about a quarter of a mile away, and it will be behind what is currently a very heavy tree line, which will be enhanced by further planting.
And is this the centre itself?
This is an initial sketch of the centre. As you can see, it's formed from circles and from spirals relating Celtic art forms. And it will contain not only the interpretive element where we will relate the story of Navan and the archaeology that's associated with it, but it will also have laboratory space and classroom educational space and facilities. It will have the usual public facilities, and it will, in the longer term, be very much a resource for the community.
The land that they're putting or hope to put the centre into, as you can see, is just in front of us here, below the Navan Fort. And the problem is that although that land is outside the Navan Fort, it's inside what we have isolated as the landscape of the whole complex of sites that we know as Navan. It's a complete ritual landscape. There are other major sites that we've identified, and Navan Fort is just one of them. And we drew a line some years ago which we said should be regarded as archaeologically and environmentally sacrosanct.
Well, what you're really saying, Richard, is that a vast amount is still to be discovered about this place. For instance, what's this here?
This is probably the oldest artificial pond in Europe. It was used for sacrifices, say, 3,000 years ago. It was constructed for that purpose, and is all part of what makes Navan important, because this is, as it were, another of the various monuments within the whole system of Navan monuments.
But what work has been done here to
Well,
prove
it was partly excavated in the 70s, and human skulls, animal skulls were found here.
So we really don't know what lies beneath the surface.
Well, we can only guess that there is an enormous amount of archaeology underneath that. It's safe, there's no doubt about that. But it's something for the future.
Making sure the past is preserved for the future is a major issue in the Republic. Their biggest national monument, Newgrange, has proved a big crowd puller, too big in fact. On a busy afternoon in summer, more people turn up to visit the ancient passage grave than the guides and the site can handle. Even in the cold and rain of April, the visitors were still turning up.
We have 150,000 visitors per annum coming here, which is a very large number. It has grown quite dramatically over the last 5 to 6 years, particularly with people's interest in archaeology increasing for a number of reasons.
Now that represents a potential wear and tear that could in fact damage the heritage. How are you preventing that?
It does indeed. The primary obligation on ourselves must be to protect the monument. Now, at the same time, people should have a right to come and visit what is a very important, very interesting monument in European terms. So we are planning a new interpretive centre where people will come when they want to come to the Boyne Valley Cemetery.
And are you going to base that down there at the reception area?
It will be, no, in fact it won't be at the reception area, it will be almost a mile away south of the River Boyne.
Well, why not? Why not have it on the doorstep? After all, with that volume of people, it represents a lot of profit.
This entire area is a very sensitive area, Brian. It's not just the monument here we must protect, and the two well-known ones, Navan and Doubt, that are quite close by. It's the landscape. The entire landscape should be protected. There are standing stones in the fields. There are various types of structures that date back to the time when this particular structure was built. So it's not good enough to protect a single structure and to abuse the landscape around it. It must be done sensitively if you're going to allow people come in large numbers.
So, something similar in terms of monument appeal, but a radically different approach to exploiting heritage. The interpretive centre at New Grange, instead of being a stone's throw from the monument, will be out of sight, over a mile away. But what about the commercial spin, the profit potential from a theme park?
Theme parks tend to suggest Disneyland to many people, and the argument has been made in the past that they are purely commercial ventures, which by and large they are. This is the real thing here. We have a genuine archaeological landscape in the Boyne Valley. An archaeological landscape is not an appropriate place for a theme park. The people who come here, I'd say not just the Irish people, but people that come from abroad, I'm sure, would like to be confident that if their descendants want to see New Grange, or want to see Doughton now, that they will have that facility, and the place will not be damaged and not be interfered with. We have to balance what the individual would like to do and what is good for the monument. For instance, the solstice, the winter solstice, you can only physically get about 25 people into the chamber when the solstice is occurring, and we have a waiting list of perhaps 4 or 5 years to come and experience that. That is simply drawing a line on what the monument can handle and what people wish to see. There has to be a balance struck between the two of them.
Why should you be so determined to develop a site which will impact visually on Navan Fort? You cannot escape it. When comparing an attitude down south, where the Office of Public Works would not under any circumstances allow any development whatever in the vicinity of one of their national monuments?
Well, it's a question of definition of vicinity. And if you stand on the top of Navan Fort or anywhere associated, standing anywhere associated with Navan Fort, if you look at the site that we have chosen, you can hardly see the operations.
You can hardly miss them with respect.
I don't think that's true. If you stand on the hilltop and you look at the view, you will find that you are talking about a site that has been chosen beside the Killilea Road, which is screened by existing trees. That tree line will be enhanced in its vegetation, and I believe that once the site, and we haven't discussed the kind of building that is going to be put up there, you will find that that site is not noticeable.
But the Office of Public Works, we've consulted with them, and they say that the trend today and the most enlightened thinking available argues in favour of putting your interpretive centre as far away as possible from the site that needs to be protected.
I understand what you're saying. We have consulted widely as well, and our planning application in Northern Ireland has been discussed extensively with the planning authorities, and they are happy with our planning application, and we've been given outline planning permission subject to the need for a suitable archaeological investigation of the ground, and that's an undertaking that we are fulfilling.
Where did your advice come from? Was it truly independent?
Which advice?
The archaeological advice.
The archaeological advice has been given from the Department of the Environment.
So you have had no independent assessment?
Not outside these quarters.
So you're receiving your guidance from the department?
In that sense, yes.
Which is under the control of the Minister?
That's right.
Why did you not go outside of that and employ suitably qualified people for an independent environmental impact assessment?
Well, we believe that that advice that we've been given is completely independent.
But it's within the department. How can that be independent?
But surely the department is a body that should be looking after the public interest, and we believe it has.
I think quite a number of people would call that into question.
Well, they're entitled to their opinions, just as we are.
Am I correct in thinking that the entire project is commerce-driven?
No, the whole project is driven by preservation of this particular landscape area. We believe that if the area is taken into ownership in the way that this company is set up, it's not a company which is a company in a public sense. It is a company there with restrictions on it. It can never be sold off into the normal domain, public domain. The restrictions there will provide a safeguard for the community's interest in this area, so that the company itself and the setting up of it is one of the mechanisms of preservation.
Well, explain to me in that case why you've chosen to put the interpretive centre where it will be according to your plans.
Because we believe that that's the most important place from the point of view of attracting the passerby. It is the most advantageous place from the point of view of safety. It is the most advantageous place from the point of view of getting from the interpretation centre into the landscape.
But surely if that isn't a commercial consideration, what is?
Well, we're not dealing with commercial consideration, but the project, while it's pump primed, has got to wash its face in the future. And one of the objectives obviously has to be that it's got to make an annual surplus. In that sense, it's commercial, but then the surplus will be ploughed back either into the operations themselves to make them more attractive to the people using them. But additionally, the monies will be placed into an archaeological research fund of the order of about £1 million, and that is to enhance the operations which will discover more for the public interest in this area.
Because of its broad cultural and historical appeal, which has been growing in recent years, development at Navan will be closely watched by official and voluntary bodies.
We opposed the original plan to site the Heritage Centre and Car Park very close to the monument. We are prepared to accept the resiting of the development some 400 metres from the site, subject to certain safeguards that we will be seeking.
What are those safeguards?
Well, the resiting of the access road from the second class road, the absence of vehicular access from the site to the monument, no development between the site and the monument, and I suppose most importantly that the site of the development will be adequately surveyed by archaeologists to ensure that there's nothing there before it is disturbed by the development.
What is the feeling locally about the argument over the appropriate development or otherwise at the site?
There's very little objection locally to the site. It mainly comes from the Philosophic Society. Other people who were interested during the period of the objection to the extension of the quarry have all rode in behind Navan at Armagh and are supporting the development of the centre out here.
What is your view about the economic potential of something like this?
It will provide jobs in an indirect way. The development here won't provide many jobs, but you have to take it in conjunction with what Armagh Council is doing for tourism at the moment. We are developing a 3.7 million tourism centre in the St Patrick's Train, where we will have the centre of belief, and we're spending over £500,000 up at the Palace, where we're developing the stables. And you take that in conjunction with the two cathedrals, the planetarium, the observatory, and all as a package, we can see that it would provide 300 to 400 jobs in an indirect way, not all of them just involved in pure tourism.
Navan itself is in line for over £3 million of grant aid, a significant proportion coming from the International Fund for Ireland.
Navan at Armagh is quite the most significant archaeological site in Ireland, maybe even in Western Europe, and the fact that there it was beside the city of Armagh and that there was so much enthusiasm for bringing it back to life, if that's not an exaggeration, appealed to us greatly.
What about the situation now? Had the squabble existed then, would you have been willing to go ahead with the funding?
I'm not as familiar with the squabble as you seem to be in the question that you'd put. I do understand that there are some variations in the experts as to where exactly it should be done and how it should be done, but I would have to take the view that these people will sort their problems out and that eventually there will be on the ground a great attraction which will remind us all of the significance of people who lived here thousands of years ago.
And the thrust is to put everything into the remit of Navan at Armagh, the developing company.
Oh, very much so. We have great comfort from the fact that has serving as the catalyst, as we like to do, putting the £1 million, which was our major contribution, in, that we enabled the project to move forward. And we're especially comfortable with the fact that the Department of the Environment and the National Heritage Fund are major supporters of this, and both those organisations, I have to assume, have expertise in this area beyond anything we want to have.
Do you believe the situation now, to all intents and purposes, is fait accompli?
I fear that it is, but I still don't want to accept it. I still would like to think that if enough people were prepared to indicate that they think that this is a bad solution, maybe the situation could be saved.
So really you're talking about damage limitation?
That's what I fear we're talking about at the moment, yeah.
It's ironic that a previous argument over Navan involved quarry excavations alongside. This resulted in a major compensation settlement for the quarry owners. The North's most recent and potentially authoritative conservation body, the CNCC, cites this issue as the basis for its opposition to current proposals at Navan.
The original argument by the archaeologists was one on the basis that stopping quarrying in the area would maintain the archaeological integrity of the hill. Now, to have won that argument and then sacrifice the entire principle on a development of this kind would seem to us to be wrong. And there is an alternative in the area in the quarry itself, which is archaeologically sterile, somewhat further back and sheltered, and if we don't do something about the quarry, then it will still stand on the site as an eyesore.
What influence do you have over the processes involved in making these decisions?
None at all. We are entirely advisory to the Department of the Environment, Countryside and Wildlife branch. So our role is simply to offer advice to a department of government, and we hope to see that advice carried on from there.
What are you saying to those respected people, eminently qualified in their various fields, who are putting forward genuine, in their terms, opposition and concerns about your development plans?
I always welcome criticism because it's
Yes,
wrong.
What are you doing about it is my question.
We believe that we are operating in a very sensible way and in a practical way, and with due regard to all the cultural and other qualities that have to be preserved.
And does that mean that their objections are irrelevant?
Oh no, all objections are valuable in knowing what's wrong with what we might be doing, or what people feel is wrong with what we are doing. And I welcome criticism, but we do know that some people have such strong felt views that they may not wish to change their mind. We just hope that in the long run they will come around to our way of thinking.
The argument over the future of Navan may reflect deeply held views, but at least today's dispute is in words, not wars.
The Red Branch itself, you see, the name of the house in which the warriors slept was red because the heads of the enemies were hung up around the roof, and so that the blood dripped down around the walls, and therefore it was around the branches of the walls, and therefore it was literally the Red Branch.
Pretty savage bunch.
Well, they were pretty savage, but by the time we read of them, we're reading of a more Christianized society, and so the stories, as I say, are stories of war, but also of love and romance.